The gunshot echoed through the quiet dawn, ripping Abigail Armstrong from a deep slumber. Her eyes flew open, heart hammering against her ribs as she bolted upright in her modest bed. It was May 1875, and trouble had found its way to Red Bluff, California once again. Abigail slipped from beneath her quilt, her bare feet silent against the wooden floor of her small homestead. The rising sun cast long shadows through the windows as she grabbed her father's old hunting rifle from above the mantel. At 25, she'd grown accustomed to the weight of it in her hands, a necessary companion for a woman living alone on the edge of town. Another shot cracked the morning stillness, followed by the thunder of hooves. Abigail crept to her window, peering through the thin curtains. A cloud of dust billowed from the road that passed her property, and within it, the silhouette of a wagon careening at breakneck speed. Behind it, 3 riders gave chase, their guns glinting in the early light. The wagon veered suddenly, its wheel catching on a rock. Abigail watched in horror as it tilted, then crashed onto its side with a splintering of wood. A woman's scream pierced the air. Without hesitation, Abigail rushed outside, rifle raised. The pursuing men hadn't noticed her yet, focused as they were on their quarry. The overturned wagon lay just beyond her property line, its contents scattered across the dusty road. A young woman crawled from the wreckage, her dress torn and bloodied. In her arms, she clutched a small bundle. Abigail's stomach dropped when she realized it was a baby, wailing weakly against the woman's chest. "Help," the woman gasped, looking up and meeting Abigail's eyes with desperate intensity. "Please, they'll kill us both." The riders were closing in, and Abigail made her decision in an instant. She fired a warning shot into the air, causing the men to rein in their horses. The woman used this moment of distraction to thrust the bundled infant into Abigail's arms. "His name is Samuel," she whispered urgently. "His father will come for him." Please, her words were cut short by another gunshot. The woman's body jerked, and her eyes widened in shock before she crumpled to the ground. Blood bloomed across her chest like a terrible flower. "No," Abigail cried, but it was too late. The woman's eyes stared unseeing at the brightening sky. The 3 riders approached slowly now, their horses snorting and pawing at the ground. "Hand over the child, miss," the leader called, his voice cold as winter steel. "That's not your concern." Abigail tightened her grip on the baby and raised her rifle with her free arm. "This is my property," she shouted back, her voice steadier than she felt. "And I don't take kindly to murderers trespassing on it." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that sent chills down her spine. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that. But you're outnumbered, and that child has value to some very important people." Abigail's mind raced. She couldn't win this fight, not against 3 armed men, but she wouldn't surrender the infant either. "I've already signaled the sheriff," she lied. "He'll be here any minute with a posse." As if the universe had decided to support her bluff, the distant sound of hoofbeats carried on the morning air. The riders exchanged uneasy glances. "This ain't over," the leader growled, wheeling his horse around. "We'll be back for what's ours." With that, they galloped away, disappearing into the rising heat of the day. The approaching rider came into view, a lone figure on horseback. Abigail kept her rifle ready, uncertain if this was friend or foe. The baby in her arms had quieted, its tiny face scrunched in sleep, despite the violence it had just witnessed. As the rider drew closer, Abigail recognized the tall, broad-shouldered silhouette of Nathan Remington, owner of the largest cattle ranch in the territory. His reputation preceded him, fair but formidable, respected by honest folk and feared by outlaws. His dark hat shadowed his face as he slowed his stallion to a stop before her homestead. "Miss Armstrong," he called, dismounting in one fluid motion. His eyes took in the scene: the overturned wagon, the dead woman, and Abigail standing with a rifle in one hand and a baby in the other. "I heard gunfire. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Mr. Remington," Abigail replied, lowering her weapon slightly. "But this woman wasn't so fortunate." Nathan approached the fallen woman, removing his hat respectfully as he knelt beside her. His face was grim as he checked for signs of life and found none. He was younger than most successful ranchers at 32, but the years had etched hard lines around his eyes and mouth. His time in the war and the harsh realities of frontier life had aged him beyond his years. "You know who she was?" he asked, looking up at Abigail. "No. She crashed her wagon while being chased, handed me this child and—" Abigail's voice faltered. "They shot her before she could say much more." Nathan stood and walked toward Abigail, his eyes now fixed on the bundle in her arms. The baby had awakened and was staring up with curious blue eyes. "Whose child is that?" he asked, his brow furrowed. Abigail met his gaze steadily, something fiercely protective stirring within her. "Mine now," she said with quiet determination. "His name is Samuel, and I won't let those men get their hands on him." Nathan studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Those were Blackwater gang riders. They don't usually venture this close to town unless there's something valuable at stake." He glanced at the baby. "Or someone. She said his father would come for him," Abigail explained, "but I don't know who that might be or when he'll arrive." "We need to get you and the child to safety," Nathan said, already scanning the horizon. "They'll be back and with more men next time." Abigail hesitated, looking down at the infant in her arms. She had never planned on motherhood, not after losing her family to typhoid 3 years ago. Yet here was this child, helpless and alone in the world save for her. "I can't leave," she said firmly. "This is my home. I won't be driven from it." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Miss Armstrong, I admire your courage, but this isn't about property. That baby has clearly stirred up trouble with dangerous men." He paused. "At least come to my ranch until we can sort this out. It's well defended, and my men are loyal." Before Abigail could respond, the baby began to cry, a hungry, desperate sound that tugged at her heart. "He needs milk," she said, her practical nature taking over. "And I need to gather supplies if we're leaving." Nathan nodded. "Make haste. I'll take care of." He glanced at the dead woman. "I'll see that she's properly laid to rest when it's safe." While Abigail hurried inside to collect what she needed, Nathan examined the overturned wagon. Among the scattered belongings, he found a woman's valise containing clothes, a small amount of money, and a sealed envelope addressed simply to Thomas. There was no surname, no address, nothing to identify its intended recipient. Inside her cabin, Abigail moved with purpose, packing clothing, food, and what little money she had saved. She found an old blanket to better wrap the baby and improvised a sling to carry him close to her body. As she worked, she spoke softly to the infant, who watched her with solemn eyes. "I don't know what trouble follows you, little one," she whispered, "but I promise I'll keep you safe." When she emerged, Nathan had already saddled her mare and secured her belongings. He held out his hands to help her mount, his touch gentle but strong. "I'll ride ahead to make sure the path is clear," he said once she was settled. "Stay close, and if you see or hear anything suspicious, call out immediately." As they rode toward the Remington ranch, Abigail couldn't help but glance back at her small homestead, the home she'd built after burying her parents and brother, the place where she'd learned to be independent and self-sufficient. She wondered if she would ever see it again. The Remington ranch sprawled across acres of prime grazing land, its white-painted main house rising like a beacon against the backdrop of rolling hills. As they approached, Ranch hands paused in their work to observe their boss returning with an unexpected guest. Nathan led Abigail to the house, where he was greeted by Mrs. Winters, his housekeeper a stout woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mr. Remington, I wasn't expecting company," she said, giving Abigail an appraising look. "Mrs. Winters, this is Miss Armstrong from the homestead east of town. She and this child will be our guests for a while. Please prepare the blue room." Nathan's tone made it clear this wasn't a request but an order. Mrs. Winters' eyes widened at the sight of the baby, but she asked no questions. "Of course, sir. I'll have it ready directly." She bustled off, already muttering about fresh linens and warming milk. Nathan turned to Abigail. "You'll be safe here. The Blackwater gang knows better than to trespass on my land." He hesitated, then added, "I need to ride into town, inform the sheriff about what happened, and make some inquiries. Will you be all right until I return?" Abigail nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the morning's events. "Yes, thank you for your kindness, Mr. Remington." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Nathan, please. I think circumstances have moved us beyond formalities, Miss Armstrong." "Abigail," she offered in return. Something passed between them, then a moment of understanding, perhaps, or the first fragile threads of trust being woven. Nathan broke the connection first, clearing his throat and reaching into his vest pocket. "I found this in the wagon," he said, handing her the sealed envelope. "It might offer some clue about the boy's family." Abigail took it, running her thumb over the name scrawled across its surface. "Thomas," she read aloud. "Do you know anyone by that name who might be connected to this?" Nathan shook his head. "It's a common enough name, but I intend to find out if anyone in these parts has been waiting on a woman and child." After Nathan departed, Mrs. Winters showed Abigail to a spacious bedroom decorated in shades of blue and cream. It was larger than her entire cabin, with tall windows overlooking the ranch's eastern pastures. "There's fresh milk warming in the kitchen," the housekeeper said, eyeing the baby with obvious curiosity. "And I've set out some clean cloths for the little one. May I ask?" "His name is Samuel," Abigail said, sensing the unspoken question. "His mother was killed this morning by outlaws. I'm caring for him until his father can be located." Mrs. Winters clucked her tongue sympathetically. "Poor lamb." "Well, you've come to the right place, Miss Armstrong. The master doesn't tolerate troublemakers, and his men are loyal to the bone." Left alone with Samuel, Abigail carefully unwrapped him, checking for any injuries. To her relief, he appeared unharmed, a healthy, robust baby of perhaps 6 months, with a shock of dark hair and wide blue eyes. He grabbed at her fingers with surprising strength, bringing a smile to her face despite everything. "You're quite the little fighter, aren't you?" she murmured. After feeding and changing the baby, exhaustion overtook Abigail. She placed Samuel in the center of the large bed, surrounding him with pillows, and lay down beside him. Just for a moment, she told herself, closing her heavy eyes. Just until Nathan returns with news. She dreamed of gunshots and screams, of a woman falling in the dust. In her dream, the baby cried and cried, but when she reached for him, he vanished like morning mist. Abigail woke with a start to find the room bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. Samuel still slept peacefully beside her, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by alarm when she realized how long she must have slept. A soft knock at the door preceded Mrs. Winters' entrance. "Ah, you're awake," the housekeeper said, carrying a tray laden with food. "Mr. Remington returned an hour ago. He asked not to disturb you but said to let him know when you're ready to talk." Abigail sat up, smoothing her rumpled hair. "Yes, thank you. I'll come down as soon as I've freshened up." Mrs. Winters set down the tray and moved to the bedside, gazing at the sleeping infant. "Such a handsome boy," she remarked. "Reminds me of the master when he was a babe, same dark hair and determined little chin." She smiled at Abigail. "I raised Mr. Remington from infancy, you know, after his mother passed. If you need any help with the little one, you just say the word." After washing her face and tidying her appearance as best she could, Abigail picked up the still sleeping Samuel and made her way downstairs. She found Nathan in his study, standing before a window with a glass of whiskey in hand, deep in thought. He turned at her entrance, his expression softening slightly at the sight of the sleeping child. "I trust you were able to rest." "Yes, thank you," Abigail said, settling into a chair. "Did you learn anything in town?" Nathan set down his glass and took a seat across from her. "The sheriff recognized my description of the men who attacked you. They work for Victor Blackwater, a man with powerful connections and few scruples." He paused. "The wagon belonged to a family passing through Red Bluff 3 days ago, a man, woman, and child. They stayed one night at the hotel, then departed heading north." "The man, could he be the Thomas mentioned in the letter?" Abigail asked. "Possibly. They registered as Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but that's obviously false." Nathan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "The clerk remembered them because the man seemed nervous, constantly watching the street. He left early the next morning alone, saying he had business to attend to and that his wife and child would join him later." Abigail's brow furrowed. "So he left them behind, knowing they might be in danger. Or he was trying to draw danger away from them," Nathan suggested. "Either way, it seems the Blackwater gang found them regardless." Samuel stirred in Abigail's arms, his face scrunching before he let out a small cry. She adjusted her hold, rocking him gently until he settled again. "You're good with him," Nathan observed quietly. "I helped raise my younger brother after my mother died," Abigail explained, a familiar pang of grief squeezing her heart. "He was much older than Samuel when I lost him to typhoid, but some things you don't forget." Nathan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The sheriff has sent telegrams to neighboring towns, asking about our mysterious Thomas. Until we hear back, you and the boy are welcome to stay here." "That's very generous, but I can't impose indefinitely," Abigail protested. "My homestead is being watched by Blackwater's men," Nathan interrupted. "I sent 2 of my hands to check. They spotted riders keeping their distance but definitely observing your property." His expression hardened. "These aren't men who give up easily, Abigail. Whatever they want with this child, they're willing to kill for it." A chill ran down Abigail's spine as she looked down at Samuel's innocent face. What could a baby possibly have that would be worth killing over? Perhaps it's not what he has, but who he is or who his parents are. Nathan rose and moved to his desk, retrieving the letter they had found. "Have you opened this?" Abigail shook her head. It felt wrong somehow, like an invasion of privacy. "Privacy matters little when lives are at stake," Nathan said, breaking the seal. He unfolded the paper within and read silently, his expression growing more troubled with each line. "What is it?" Abigail asked, unable to bear the suspense. Nathan looked up, his eyes dark with concern. "It appears our young Samuel is the heir to a considerable fortune and the son of a man with powerful enemies." He handed her the letter, and Abigail read it while cradling Samuel with one arm. "My dearest Thomas, if you are reading this, then I have succeeded in reaching you and our son is safe. I can no longer live this lie, watching Victor destroy everything and everyone in his path to power. The evidence you need is sewn into Samuel's blanket proof of all his crimes, including the murder of your brother. I know now that you were right to leave when you did. I was a fool to believe Victor would change, that our marriage could somehow redeem him. Instead, I've become a prisoner in my own home, and I fear for our son's life as Victor grows more unstable. By the time you read this, I will have fled to join you at the arranged meeting place. If something happens to me, protect our son. He is all that matters now, forever yours. Elizabeth Abigail looked up, stunned. Elizabeth Blackwater. She was married to Victor Blackwater. Nathan nodded grimly. And apparently having an affair with this Thomas, who may be Samuel's real father. He took the letter back, studying it. The murdered woman must have been Elizabeth, trying to reunite with her lover and bring him evidence of her husband's crimes. The blanket, Abigail gasped, remembering the bundle she'd been handed. Samuel's blanket, we need to examine it. They hurried back to Abigail's room, where she unwrapped the sleeping baby from his blanket, a finely made item of soft blue wool with satin edging. Nathan ran his fingers along the seams until he found what they were looking for, a section that had been carefully opened and resewn. Using his pocket knife, Nathan gently cut the threads and extracted several folded papers from within the stuffing. He spread them on the table, revealing ledgers, contracts, and a letter signed by Victor Blackwater that explicitly ordered the murder of someone named James Remington. James Remington, Abigail read, looking up at Nathan with wide eyes. Any relation to you? Nathan's face had gone pale, his jaw clenched tight. My younger brother, he said tightly. He disappeared 3 years ago while investigating cattle rustling on the northern borders of our land. His body was never found. Abigail's heart sank. I'm so sorry, Nathan. I didn't know. Few did. The official story was that he went east to study law. Nathan gathered the papers carefully, his movements controlled despite the emotion evident in his eyes. All this time, I suspected Blackwater was involved, but I never had proof. Now I do. The implications settled between them like a physical weight. This changes everything, Abigail said quietly. Blackwater isn't just after the child, he's after evidence that could send him to the gallows. And he knows it's here with Samuel. Nathan's expression was resolute now. We need to find Thomas not just for the boy's sake, but to bring Blackwater to justice. That evening, while Samuel slept in a makeshift cradle fashioned from a dresser drawer, Abigail and Nathan pored over the documents Elizabeth had hidden. They painted a damning picture of Victor Blackwater, land theft, extortion, and multiple murders disguised as accidents or blamed on bandits. The territorial governor is a friend of mine, Nathan said as midnight approached. With these papers and Thomas's testimony, we could finally see Blackwater answer for his crimes. If we can find Thomas, Abigail reminded him, and if he's still alive. Nathan rubbed his tired eyes. The letter mentioned a meeting place, but not where. It must have been something prearranged between them. A thought struck Abigail. The wagon was heading north when I found it, and you said the family stayed in Red Bluff before the man left alone. What's north of here that might serve as a meeting place? Several mining towns, the railroad junction at Reading Springs. Nathan paused, his eyes widening slightly. The old mission at Clear Creek. It's abandoned now, but it would provide shelter and is remote enough to avoid prying eyes. Could that be it? Abigail asked hopefully. It's worth investigating, Nathan said, standing. I'll ride out at first light. I'm coming with you, Abigail stated firmly. Samuel stays with me, Nathan frowned. It's too dangerous. If Blackwater's men are watching, they're watching for a woman with a baby, Abigail interrupted. Not a family traveling with a respected rancher. She held his gaze steadily. I promised to protect him, Nathan. I won't break that promise by letting him out of my sight. After a moment, Nathan nodded, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. You're a formidable woman, Abigail Armstrong. I've had to be, she replied simply. They departed before dawn, traveling in Nathan's covered wagon rather than on horseback. To casual observers, they would appear to be a family on a legitimate journey, Nathan driving, Abigail beside him with Samuel cradled in her arms, and two of Nathan's most trusted ranch hands riding alongside as escorts. The mission lay a day's journey north, requiring them to make camp for one night along the way. As twilight fell, they stopped in a sheltered grove near a small stream. While the ranch hands set up the camp and prepared a fire, Abigail tended to Samuel, who had been surprisingly content throughout the journey. "He's a good traveler," Nathan commented, approaching with a cup of coffee for her. "Most babies his age would be fussing constantly." Abigail smiled, accepting the cup gratefully. "He seems to understand we're trying to help him, or perhaps he's just an unusually even-tempered child." Nathan sat beside her on a fallen log, watching as Samuel grabbed at a strand of Abigail's hair that had escaped her bonnet. "You care for him as if he were your own." "Is that so strange?" Abigail asked softly. "He's innocent in all this. Someone needs to love him." "And you do?" Nathan's question was gentle, curious rather than judgmental. Abigail considered this. Just days ago she had been a solitary woman with a quiet life. Now her heart was bound to this child who had literally been thrust into her arms. "Yes," she admitted. "I do love him already. Foolish, perhaps." "Not foolish," Nathan said, his voice warm in the gathering dusk. "Remarkable." Their eyes met over the baby's head, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. Nathan looked away first, clearing his throat. "We should get some rest. Tomorrow may bring challenges." As night fell, Abigail lay in the wagon with Samuel nestled against her side. Outside, she could hear the low murmur of the men taking turns at watch. Despite the danger that might lie ahead, she felt oddly at peace, as if this unexpected journey was somehow always meant to be. Morning brought clear skies and renewed determination. They reached the old mission by midday, its adobe walls weathered but still standing against the backdrop of hills dotted with oak trees. The place seemed deserted, with no signs of recent habitation. "Stay here with Jackson," Nathan instructed Abigail, referring to one of the ranch hands. "Cooper and I will search the buildings." Abigail nodded, holding Samuel close as she watched Nathan and his foreman approach the mission cautiously, guns drawn. The minutes stretched endlessly as she waited, scanning the surrounding landscape for any sign of danger. Eventually, Nathan emerged from the main building and gestured for her to join them. As Jackson helped her down from the wagon, Abigail's heart raced with anticipation. Had they found Thomas? Was this ordeal nearly over? Inside the cool, shadowed interior of the old chapel, Nathan led her to a small side room that might once have served as an office for the mission priests. A man lay on a makeshift bed of blankets, his face pale with fever, a crude bandage wrapped around his thigh stained with blood. His eyes fluttered open at their entrance, widening when they fell upon Samuel in Abigail's arms. "Elizabeth," he croaked. "Is that you?" "No," Abigail said gently, approaching his bedside. "My name is Abigail Armstrong. Are you Thomas?" The man struggled to sit up, his gaze fixed on the baby. "Yes, Thomas Harrington." "Where is Elizabeth? Is she safe?" Nathan stepped forward. "Mr. Harrington, I'm Nathan Remington. I'm afraid we have difficult news. Elizabeth Blackwater is dead. She was killed 3 days ago while trying to reach you." Thomas's face crumpled in grief, tears streaming down his gaunt cheeks. "No," he whispered. "No, she can't be." He reached out with trembling hands toward Samuel. "My son. She got our son to safety." Abigail carefully placed Samuel in his father's arms, her throat tight with emotion as Thomas held his child for what might have been the first time. The baby seemed to sense something important in the moment, his tiny hands pressing against his father's tear-stained face. "She gave him to me before she died," Abigail explained softly. "Said you would come for him. We found the letter and the evidence hidden in his blanket." Thomas looked up sharply. "The evidence, you have it. It's safe." "Yes," Nathan confirmed. "Enough to bring Victor Blackwater to justice for numerous crimes, including the murder of my brother." Relief washed over Thomas's features. "Thank God. Then Elizabeth didn't die in vain." He winced suddenly, his face contorting in pain. "You're injured," Abigail observed, noticing fresh blood seeping through his bandage. "Blackwater's men," Thomas explained weakly. "They ambushed me on the road to Red Bluff. I killed 2 before taking a bullet myself. Managed to make it here but couldn't travel further." He looked down at Samuel with anguish. "I couldn't protect them. I tried to draw Blackwater's attention away, make him think I had the evidence, but he must have suspected." "You need a doctor," Nathan said firmly. "We'll get you back to my ranch. It's well defended and we can send for medical help there." Thomas shook his head. "No time. Blackwater will have men watching every road." He held Samuel tighter. "You must take my son and the evidence to the territorial governor. It's the only way to end this." Before they could argue, the sound of approaching horses reached them. Cooper rushed into the room, his expression grim. "Riders coming fast from the south, Mr. Remington. At least 6 of them." Nathan's decision was immediate. "Jackson, help Mr. Harrington to the wagon. Cooper, prepare to hold them off as long as possible." He turned to Abigail. "Take Samuel and get to the back exit. There's a trail through the hills that leads to the north road. If we get separated, keep riding until you reach Reading Springs. Ask for Judge Calloway. He's an honest man and will help you." "I'm not leaving you," Abigail protested, even as she took Samuel back from his father's reluctant arms. "Yes, you are," Nathan said firmly, his hands gripping her shoulders. "That child and those documents are the only hope for justice. I'll find you, I promise." The intensity in his eyes made her heart stutter. Before she could respond, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a brief, fierce kiss. "Go," he whispered against her mouth. "Now." The world seemed to shrink to this one moment, his touch, his scent, the unspoken feelings passing between them. Then Samuel whimpered, breaking the spell, and Abigail knew what she had to do. "Come back to us," she said, then turned and fled toward the back of the mission. The sound of gunfire erupted behind her as she slipped through a narrow doorway and into a walled garden. Following Nathan's directions, she found a gate that led to a steep path climbing into the hills. Samuel clung to her, his little face buried against her neck as she scrambled upward, her heart pounding with exertion and fear. From higher ground, she could see the mission below, where Nathan and his men had taken positions to defend against the approaching riders. The attackers split into 2 groups, 4 men engaging in the firefight, while 2 others circled around toward the back of the complex, toward her. Panic surged through Abigail, but she forced herself to think clearly. She couldn't outrun mounted men, not while carrying Samuel. Her only hope was to hide and pray they passed by without spotting her. A cluster of boulders and scrub oak offered the only concealment nearby. Abigail ducked behind them, pressing herself flat against the earth and sheltering Samuel beneath her body. The baby, as if sensing the danger, remained miraculously quiet, his blue eyes wide and solemn as he stared up at her. "Brave boy," she whispered, her lips against his forehead. "Just a little longer." The riders drew closer, their horses' hooves sending small cascades of stones down the hillside. Abigail held her breath as they paused just yards from her hiding place. "See anything?" one man called. "Nothing," the other replied. "Maybe they didn't come this way." The boss said the woman would have the baby and the papers. We don't find them, we don't get paid. Check further up. I'll search these rocks. Abigail's blood turned to ice as footsteps approached her hiding place. Samuel chose that moment to let out a soft coo, and she quickly covered his mouth with her hand, tears springing to her eyes at the necessity of it. The footsteps stopped. Did you hear that? Closing her eyes, Abigail prepared for discovery. But suddenly, gunshots rang out from below, closer and more frantic than before. Both men cursed. That's from inside the mission, one said urgently. They must have found Harrington. Come on. To Abigail's immense relief, they remounted and galloped back toward the mission. Once they were out of sight, she rose shakily to her feet. Samuel was crying softly now, frightened by the tension and noise. "Shh, sweet boy," she soothed, rocking him gently. "We'll be all right." But would they? What of Nathan and the others? What of Thomas, Samuel's father? Were they even now fighting for their lives, or worse, already lost? Abigail gazed back toward the mission, torn between her promise to protect Samuel and her desperate need to know if Nathan was safe. The decision was made for her when a plume of smoke began rising from the mission roof. Fire deliberately set or caused by the gunfight, she couldn't tell, but it was spreading rapidly. Her chest constricting with dread, Abigail turned away and continued up the path. Nathan had given her clear instructions. Get Samuel to safety, deliver the evidence to Judge Calloway. She would honor that, no matter the cost to her own heart. The journey to Reading Springs was arduous, especially for a woman traveling alone with an infant. Abigail avoided the main roads, taking forest paths and deer trails when possible. She rationed the meager supplies she'd managed to grab: a water skin, some dried beef, and a handful of biscuits wrapped in a napkin. By the second day, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Her feet were blistered, her arms aching from carrying Samuel. The baby, too, was growing fussy without proper food and comfort. When she came upon a small homestead nestled in a clearing, Abigail made the difficult decision to seek help. The woman who answered her knock was initially suspicious of the bedraggled stranger on her doorstep. But when Abigail explained she was fleeing danger with an orphaned baby, maternal instinct overcame caution. "My name's Martha Glover," the woman said, ushering them inside. "My husband's away hunting, but you're welcome to rest here. That poor little mite looks half-starved." Martha provided goat's milk for Samuel, a hot meal for Abigail, and the blessed opportunity to wash and change them both. When she offered a place to sleep for the night, Abigail gratefully accepted. "You said you're heading to Reading Springs?" Martha asked as they sat by the fire later. "That's still a good day's walk from here. My husband returns tomorrow. He could take you in our wagon." "That's very kind, but I shouldn't linger," Abigail replied, thinking of Nathan and the others. Were they searching for her? Had they escaped the fire? The not knowing was torture. "At least let me pack you proper provisions," Martha insisted, "and some clean clothes for the baby." Abigail couldn't refuse such generosity. She departed at dawn the next day, her spirits lifted by Martha's kindness and the few hours of proper rest. Samuel, too, seemed rejuvenated, babbling happily from the sling Martha had fashioned to distribute his weight more evenly across Abigail's back and chest. Reading Springs came into view by late afternoon, a bustling settlement that had grown around the railroad junction and nearby mineral springs. It was larger than Red Bluff, with proper streets, a hotel, and various businesses catering to travelers and the growing population. Abigail made her way to the courthouse, a substantial brick building in the town center. Her appearance travel-worn and carrying a baby drew curious looks, but she held her head high, focused on her purpose. Judge Calloway was indeed in Reading Springs, but getting an audience proved challenging. His clerk, a pinched-faced man with spectacles, was reluctant to interrupt the judge's schedule for a woman with no appointment and no apparent legal business. "The judge is extremely busy with the circuit court today," he explained with thinly veiled impatience. "If you wish to file a petition, I can provide the necessary forms." "This isn't a legal petition," Abigail tried to explain. "It's an urgent matter involving criminal evidence. Mr. Nathan Remington sent me." The mention of Nathan's name caused a subtle shift in the clerk's demeanor. "Mr. Remington, you say, the rancher from Red Bluff?" "Yes, please, it's a matter of life and death." The clerk hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Wait here." He disappeared through a polished oak door, returning moments later with a different expression. "The judge will see you now, Miss Armstrong." Abigail Armstrong. Judge Calloway was a tall, imposing figure with a shock of white hair and penetrating gray eyes. He rose from behind his desk as Abigail entered, gesturing for her to take a seat. "Miss Armstrong, my clerk tells me you bring an urgent message from Nathan Remington." "Yes, Your Honor." Abigail shifted Samuel to her lap and reached into her bodice, where she had hidden the damning documents for safekeeping. "These papers contain evidence of multiple crimes committed by Victor Blackwater, including murder." The judge's eyebrows rose as he accepted the folded papers. "Serious allegations. And this evidence came to you how?" Abigail explained everything: finding Elizabeth dying on the road, protecting Samuel, meeting Nathan, discovering Thomas at the mission, and their desperate escape from Blackwater's men. As she spoke, the judge's expression grew increasingly grave. "I've had suspicions about Blackwater for years," he said when she finished, "but he's always been careful to maintain a veneer of legitimacy. These documents—" He tapped the papers thoughtfully. "These could finally bring him to justice." "Then you believe me?" Abigail asked, relief flooding through her. "I've known Nathan Remington since he was a boy. If he vouched for this information, that's good enough for me." Judge Calloway leaned forward. "But where is Nathan now? And the child's father?" Abigail's throat tightened. "I don't know. There was a fight at the mission. A fire. I had to leave with Samuel before I could see the outcome." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "I'll send a telegram to the sheriff in Clear Creek immediately, and another to the territorial governor. In the meantime, you and the child should remain under protection." He wrote briefly on a piece of paper and handed it to her. "This is the address of my sister's boarding house. Tell her I sent you and to give you the back room. It's more secure with fewer windows." Abigail rose. Samuel nestled against her shoulder. "Thank you, Your Honor. But if Nathan comes looking for me, I'll make sure he knows where to find you," the judge assured her. "And Miss Armstrong, be careful. Blackwater has eyes and ears everywhere." The judge's sister, Mrs. Eleanor Penfield, was a widow who ran her boarding house with military precision and a surprisingly warm heart. Upon reading her brother's note, she immediately ushered Abigail and Samuel to the promised room and sent up hot water for bathing. "Judge says you're in some kind of trouble," Mrs. Penfield remarked as she helped Abigail settle in. "Don't need to know the details, but if anyone comes asking questions, they'll get nothing from me." "Thank you," Abigail said gratefully. "I hope we won't impose for long." Mrs. Penfield waved away her concerns. "Been a while since we had a baby in the house. Does these old walls good to hear young life again?" She smiled at Samuel, who was examining his toes with great concentration. "Handsome little fellow. Takes after his pa, I expect." The question caught Abigail off guard. In her exhaustion, she hadn't considered what story to tell about Samuel. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, he does." After Mrs. Penfield departed, Abigail gave Samuel a proper bath in a tin tub, savoring his delighted splashes and giggles. As she dried and dressed him in the clean clothes Martha had provided, She found herself wondering what Nathan would think of the tableau they presented, this domestic scene so at odds with the danger that had brought them here. Nathan. Her heart ached at the thought of him. Had he survived the attack? Was he even now searching for her, or had Blackwater's men? No, she couldn't bear to complete the thought. Nathan was alive. He had to be. Days passed with agonizing slowness. Judge Calloway visited twice, bringing news that the territorial governor had issued warrants for Victor Blackwater's arrest based on the evidence Abigail had delivered. However, Blackwater had disappeared, along with many of his men. "They're searching his properties and known hideouts," the judge explained. "It's only a matter of time before he's apprehended." "And Nathan?" Abigail asked, the question that had been burning on her lips since his arrival. "Have you heard anything?" The judge's expression softened. "The sheriff found evidence of a fierce gunfight at the mission. Several bodies were recovered, badly burned in the fire." Seeing Abigail's face drain of color, he quickly added, "But Nathan wasn't among them, nor was Thomas Harrington." "Then they might have escaped," Abigail said, hope surging through her. "It's possible. Nathan is resourceful and knows the territory well." The judge patted her hand kindly. "Don't lose faith, my dear." A week after arriving in Reading Springs, Abigail was beginning to feel like a prisoner in the boarding house. Mrs. Penfield brought their meals to their room, insisting it was safer than joining the other boarders in the dining room. Samuel was thriving under her care, but Abigail herself was growing restless and increasingly worried about Nathan. That evening, as she sat by the window watching the street below, a movement caught her eye: a tall figure on horseback, pausing at the corner opposite the boarding house. Even in the gathering dusk, something about the rider's posture was achingly familiar. Heart pounding, Abigail leaned closer to the glass. The rider looked up, and even from a distance she recognized him immediately. Nathan. Without thinking, she grabbed Samuel from his makeshift bed and rushed downstairs, ignoring Mrs. Penfield's startled questions. She burst onto the porch just as Nathan was dismounting in front of the boarding house. He looked up, and their eyes met across the short distance. His face was bruised, a bandage visible at his collar, but he was alive, wonderfully, gloriously alive. "Abigail," he breathed, crossing the space between them in long strides. She couldn't speak, could only drink in the sight of him as tears blurred her vision. Nathan stopped before her, his hands coming up to gently cup her face. "You're safe," he murmured, "both of you." "We thought you were dead," Abigail managed, her voice breaking. "The mission, the fire." "It was close," Nathan admitted. "Thomas and I barely got out. Cooper didn't make it, and Jackson was badly wounded." Grief shadowed his face momentarily before he continued. "We've been in hiding, recovering. Thomas is with the governor now, giving his testimony." Samuel, recognizing Nathan despite their brief acquaintance, reached out with eager hands. Nathan smiled, taking the baby from Abigail's arms. "Hello, young man. Keeping your guardian out of trouble." The casual domesticity of the moment struck Abigail with unexpected force. This was what she wanted: Nathan, Samuel, the three of them together. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. Mrs. Penfield appeared in the doorway, breaking the spell. "Might be best to continue this reunion inside," she suggested pointedly. "Streets have eyes, you know." They followed her into the house, where she showed them to a private parlor before discreetly withdrawing. Once alone, Nathan set Samuel on a blanket with a wooden spoon to occupy him, then turned back to Abigail. "The judge told me what you did," he said quietly. "How you got the evidence to him." "You're quite remarkable, Abigail Armstrong." "I was so afraid," she confessed, "not just for Samuel but for you when I saw that fire." "I know." Nathan took her hands in his thumbs tracing circles on her skin. I've thought of nothing but finding you since that day, making sure you were safe." There was something in his voice, an undercurrent of emotion that made her breath catch. "Nathan, let me speak," he said gently. "These past weeks have changed everything for me. When I thought I might die in that mission, my only regret was that I might never see you again, never tell you what I've come to feel." Abigail's heart thundered in her chest as Nathan continued, his voice deep with sincerity. "I've lived a solitary life since losing my brother. Built walls around myself, focused only on my ranch and seeking justice. Then you appeared with a rifle in one hand and a baby in the other, fierce as any warrior and gentle as any mother. You tore those walls down without even trying." He released one of her hands to touch her cheek. "I love you, Abigail. I know it's sudden, perhaps even foolish given all that's happened, but I love you. And if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you and Samuel." Joy bloomed in Abigail's chest, so intense it almost hurt. "And Thomas, Samuel's father, is grateful to you for saving his son's life, but is in no condition to care for a child," Nathan explained. "His wounds were severe, and once Blackwater is brought to justice, he plans to return east to rebuild his life. He asked if we would consider raising Samuel as our own." Abigail glanced at the baby happily gumming the wooden spoon on his blanket. She had come to love him fiercely in their short time together, had already begun to think of him as hers. And now Nathan was offering to make that reality permanent, to create the family she had lost and never expected to find again. "I love you too," she whispered, finally meeting Nathan's gaze. "I think I have since that first day when you rode up to my homestead and didn't question that I'd claimed a stranger's child as my own." Nathan smiled, the warmth of it transforming his face. "How could I? You holding that baby, declaring him yours with such conviction, it was the bravest thing I'd ever seen." He leaned forward, his lips finding hers in a tender kiss that deepened as Abigail wound her arms around his neck. They broke apart at Samuel's delighted squeal, both laughing as they looked down to find him watching them with bright interest. "I think he approves," Nathan said, kneeling to scoop the baby up. Samuel immediately grabbed for Nathan's hat, a look of determination on his tiny face. "He knows family when he sees it," Abigail agreed, her heart full as she watched the man she loved hold the child who had brought them together. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Abigail Armstrong became Abigail Remington in a simple ceremony at the Red Bluff church. Samuel, dressed in a tiny suit sewn by Mrs. Winters, served as the smallest and most enthusiastic member of the wedding party, bouncing in Judge Calloway's arms throughout the service. Victor Blackwater had been captured trying to flee to Mexico, and now awaited trial for his crimes. Thomas Harrington, still recovering from his wounds but gaining strength daily, had signed papers legally transferring guardianship of Samuel to Nathan and Abigail before departing for Boston. "He'll always know who his birth parents were," Thomas had said on the day he left, tears in his eyes as he held his son one last time. "But he'll be raised with love, which is all Elizabeth and I ever wanted for him." After the wedding, the newlyweds and their adopted son returned to the Remington ranch, now their shared home. Abigail had sold her homestead, using the money to help establish a school in Red Bluff. She planned to teach there herself once Samuel was a bit older. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Nathan found Abigail on the porch, Samuel sleeping contentedly against her shoulder. He sat beside her on the swing, his arm slipping naturally around her waist. "Happy, Mrs. Remington," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Completely," she answered truthfully. "Though I still can't believe how our lives changed in an instant, all because I was in the right place at the right time when that wagon crashed." Nathan's expression grew thoughtful. Or perhaps it was always meant to be this way. Perhaps we were always meant to find each other, and Samuel was the miracle that brought us together. Abigail leaned her head against his shoulder, Samuel's warm weight a reminder of all they had gained and all they had to look forward to. "I like that thought," she said softly. "That some things, even in this unpredictable world, are simply meant to be." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the small family remained on the porch, basking in the quiet joy of being together. From tragedy had come love, from danger security, from an orphan child thrust into her arms, a family Abigail had never dared to dream might be hers. "Mine now," she had declared that fateful morning, not knowing how prophetic those words would prove to be. Not just Samuel, but this life, this love, this future stretching before them like the endless western sky, all of it was hers now, to cherish and protect for all the days to come. And as Nathan's hand found hers in the gathering darkness, their fingers intertwining as naturally as their lives had become entwined, Abigail knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, home at last, with the family that fate and courage had helped her find.